Alrighty, guys. It's been a long time coming, but unfortunately, we have to put this goodbye. Um, I'm not talking about the podcast. I'm talking about Corstian Wilson's QB and favorite saying, "Let's ride." It has officially ended. The ride to the roller coaster is gone. Broncos have released Russell Wilson. Corstian, I know you hate talking about this, so um, I won't let you go into full detail on this. But
Mhm.
are you surprised about this move at all? And what kind of reaction do you have to this?
Um, yeah, I mean, I figured this move off would either come this off season or next one. Just kind of depending on how they wanted to play around with the cap. And I think maybe if the cap didn't get increased, they might have pushed it off the next season. But with the cap increase, uh, I think it made it like a better option, or at least an easier option to like just cut your losses here, I guess. Um, and based off this cut as well, it seems pretty obvious that no team wanted to trade for Russell Wilson in the first place, which I mean kind of speaks a lot to the market value and like of what he is. And so it seems like he's going to probably sign, a Bettman somewhere. But yeah, I mean, like I wished it worked out, but it didn't, which was unfortunate. I think he had high hopes. I think everyone had high hopes for this combination, but um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we kind of started to see some regression, like his last year in Seattle, and I think everybody was hoping to see, like prime Russell Wilson kind of still playing, which he isn't. So he has to kind of like adopt. I think in the future, at least, he has to figure out how to like adopt to kind of just his new limitations that he's got, and I think that's where he can find success. But I think that's something that's kind of like a big stepping stone for him, at least in terms of a player.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And then we can not continue to harbor on this as well. So,
Mhm.
I mean, 85 million in cap is a lot. I saw a lot of tweets out like that's like the
Mhm.
largest contract, and then like Russell Wilson showed it twice. It's like the largest cap hit, like among
Mhm.
like the top five like quarterbacks, like that a team had to absorb contracts for. And um, I think the point you made about the cap increasing is huge because really that's like a net of like a 55 million like cap hit
Mhm.
rather than like an 85 million cap hit with that. But I think the Broncos had to make this move. I think there's just too much of toxicity going around with like and too
Mhm.
much of pressure on like Sean Payton first year on the job to like
Mhm.
make Russell Wilson great again. And
Mhm.
um like it seemed like they butted heads. It seemed like no matter the system, it just wasn't a good fit.
Mhm.
And Russell Wilson was one of my favorite players to watch in prime Seattle. And it's clear, like I think his athletic ability is not the same. Um, that was a huge part of his game. Um, and Pete Carroll maximized it with the running game and the passing game and a deep passing game that Russell Wilson was so great at to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Um, I think he has to find himself again for sure. So yeah, and welcome back to the podcast. That's how we wanted to start it off. So there you go. That was a big piece of news we wanted to touch on though, because from last week there's a lot of speculation on what the quarterback market is going to look like. Um,
Mhm.
and we're going to get into this later, but Kirk Cousins was not franchise tagged,
Mhm.
which would have been insane. I know like Chris Jones wasn't franchise tagged either. But he's like, but that would have been a $32 cap hit. So
Mhm.
on that note, there are lots of players that got franchise tagged
Yep.
today, and we're getting this really live. We're recording this at like 5 p.m. Eastern time, Wednesday,
Mhm.
March 5th. So I'm gonna go for the list of guys that got tagged. So Corsan and I are up to speed on that, but also for your reference, and then we'll get into this topic question that I have up. Um, all right, so tagged players. Josh Allen, non-exclusive for the Jaguars. Brian Burns, non-exclusive for the Panthers. Kyle Duggar, transition tag by the Patriots. T. Higgins, non-exclusive by the Bengals. Jalen Johnson, love to see that, non-exclusive by the Bears. Justin Matabuke, I, I really wanted him, but Baltimore probably wasn't going to let him go, and they signed a non-exclusive tag on him, or placed a non-exclusive tag on Matabuke. Um, Michael Pittman, Colts placed a non-exclusive franchise tag on him. Snead got tagged non exclusively by the Chiefs. Antoine Winfield got his franchise tag placed by the Buccaneers. Alrighty. So from the list of players that weren't tagged, or from that list of players I mentioned that were tagged, did you have any surprises at all?
um, I feel like more or less this makes sense. I think if you're the Colts, you'd have like hoped to get a long-term deal with Pittman. Um, but more or less, I think these are pretty good tags here. 'Cause I know like there's the whole like question mark about Jalen Johnson's future with the Bears, and so I think the tags kind of like a prove it year for the Bears to kind of show that Jalen Johnson can commit to this team. Because I guess that was kind of the on-season kind of struggle that they had a little bit, but I think we predicted the Antoine Winfield franchise tag quite a while ago with assuming that Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans gets re-signed, which we're 1 for 2 there so far.
Yeah.
That was a crazy deal with Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think it was $2 million for 52.
Or 2 years for
Sorry,
52.
sorry.
52
I don't
year,
know what I said there.
$2 million a year deal, dude.
52 years for 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Clearly, I know how to speak English. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, the actual deal was 2 years for $52 million. So, we got that news yesterday about Mike Evans.
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield, I kind of think that news is that like that's going to be like a market set by like what fields. We were just talking about Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, like
Mm-hmm.
what they end up signing for, and that's going to kind of like define what Baker Mayfield does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I wanted to touch upon a couple of players you mentioned. So like Michael Pittman, I wasn't really surprised the Colts didn't use a long term extension on him because if you look at a player like one of your favorite players from the 2023 draft class, Josh Downs,
Mm-hmm.
he really shown a lot. And then if you're looking at this wide receiver class out of 2024, I said this last year. I said it like 2 years ago, as well. But like it just seems like the wide receiver rookies coming out of draft classes seem to get better and better and better and better. And we just saw Xavier Worthy run like the fastest combine time
Mm-hmm.
um, in league history, like faster than John Ross by 100th of a second. And he's actually a really good receiver coming out as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and he's projected at the end of the first round. So like, these are the types of players we're talking about, like that are available to the Colts in order like to challenge Pittman or like to get
Mm-hmm.
the best out of him. So I'm not really surprised they signed him to long-term extension. Um, I think you're a little off on like the Bears' take on Jalen Johnson. From what I gather, it looks really positive. He wants to be there. He sounded like they were close, like from Jalen Johnson's press conferences. Poles wants to sign him. I think they're going to allocate cap spaces, to get Jalen Johnson signed. So I'm not too worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now obviously that can change with like the amount of years, guaranteed money,
Mm-hmm.
like whatever that is. But it sounds like they're close. I'm not too worried on that. Um, Before I let you have your turn as well,
Mm-hmm.
I do want to list a couple players not tagged just in case they raise some eyebrows for you. So you probably know about Saquon. He wasn't tagged by the Giants. He's going to be a free agent. The Giants also did not tag Xavier McKinney, free safety. Um, and the Miami Dolphins did not use the franchise tag on Christian Wilkins.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's surprising. I did not see that one coming,
Mm-hmm.
given with the amount of injuries they've had to Bradley Chubb, and then like the awful, awful Achilles injury to um, that defensive end Jalen Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would think the Miami Dolphins are like, okay, Christian Wilkins is the one guy we can count on. Let's get him settled. But what are your thoughts on the other players? Are you surprised Barkley wasn't tagged? Are you also surprised Wilkins wasn't tagged? Or
um,
Wilkins?
yeah. So I mean, like with Barkley, I think their goal was to get him into a contract and not to use the franchise tag because that's kind of just been a big thing with the running backs, is trying to get like an actual contract going their way. But and then with the Wilkins, I'm also not really surprised. It seems like the Dolphins are going to try to make a pretty big shift on their defense this upcoming season. They're switching defensive coordinators. They got rid of, Xavier Howard. They just cut Jerome Baker, which frees up a ton of cap. And so I think they're kind of like keeping some of their key stars and then trying to just like limit some of like the heavy hitting contracts that would just kind of make it harder to bring in maybe some of the guys that their new defensive coordinator wants in free agency. And so
Hmm.
that could be an option. And then there's still like opportunity for these guys to just like sign back on like cheaper deals, or like Jerome Baker, for example. I wouldn't be surprised if he, comes back on like a potential like cheaper deal. And then Wilkins, like, I don't know. But I feel like that's my take on the Dolphins, at least right now.
Yeah, I mean, as a Bears fan looking for more defensive line help to try and like supplant Sweat, I would love it if the Bears like gave Wilkins a payday. I think it would be well worth it. Um, they need that kind of help despite like the amount of draft picks they've thrown at the defensive tackle position. Um, I just think that's one guy you got to prioritize signing on your defense because who knows how long Jalen Ramsey's going to be playing at a high level
Mm-hmm.
like this. Um, who knows what's going to happen to the defensive ends I mentioned. Um, regardless of like the coordinator shift, you want solid play out of your tackles and your defensive
Mm-hmm.
line. That really sets the tone for your defense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought I would think like Miami started to build something there, and then knowing coming off that Chiefs game they played in the cold that you need to really have strong play in the trenches and making sure you fortify that and maintain what you got with like strong players that way. I would have kept that. Christian Wilkins is one of those guys like that, like he can ruffle Patrick Mahomes' feathers a little bit. Like you saw it in moments, and I think
Mm-hmm.
those kind of intangibles are things you need on the team. And um, I think they're making a mistake here by not attacking him. Honestly,
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it just comes down to just like cap space, because
yeah.
I mean that's why they have so many, like, I guess, defensive casualties, like, getting moved off of the team for now, at least. Kind of just like amongst the guys I mentioned a second ago. And so I think, while I think it would be best if they could keep Wilkins long term, and I wouldn't be surprised if they shouldn't offer long term his way, but like for now, I think that's like a better deal if they want to keep him as like their guy, rather than just trying to go for a single year franchise tag. Um, and like, I mean, like, they still got like a couple other good guys that I like on their defense that are on like the younger age or younger end of things. And so,
Mm.
and then they have a couple of key veterans too. And so I think it's like a big retooling off season for the Dolphins, at least on the defensive side, just because, um, I don't know. I don't think they were very happy with just like over the course of the season how well they played on defense, especially against tougher opponents.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to look at their free agents right now. Um, you got Emmanuel Ogba, another member of the defensive line, set for free agency. We just talked about Wilkins. We talked about Baker. Talked about Connor Williams, another guy that's going to be crazy to let him go. They have 18 million in cap space, so they don't have a
Mm-hmm.
lot to work with here. But and Van Ginkel's also gone to free agency. So like it's like I I don't know. I think you have to try and sign like two of those guys. They fit the system, and it's like who are you gonna replace? Who are you gonna replace them with? So I think that situation is like a wait and see approach, and it's a risky one.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I understand like the Dolphins' perspective why they had to make the moves they made. It's similar to what the Bears did with Cody Whitehair and Eddie Jackson. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just I'm wondering how they're gonna fill that void, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
because it's similar to like the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Like everybody did not want him a season ago. Um, Cowboys made that deal to sign him as like top QB money, and to his credit, he played like an MVP candidate throughout the regular season. Had his best career. But it's just a battle of like Do I manage my salary cap, or do I try to keep like the most talented players I have and take the risk and eat that money? And I think this is one of those situations where it's like if you don't have a solid backup plan in place, you're gonna you're gonna have to make moves like this. So like it's a kind of a waiting game. Like it's a smart move to save money to give yourself a chance to sign a high price free agent. But we also have to keep in mind every team in the league got 30 million cap space
Hmm.
like relief. So like anybody can throw that $30 million contract at Christian Wilkins and get better. May I dare say the Buffalo Bills? May I dare say the New York Jets, who already have a loaded defensive line? The worst thing that could happen is if you lose one of those attitude players on your team that made a difference because you couldn't manage your money right. So this is a
Hmm.
very delicate situation. Like you mentioned, they could always re-sign him to like some sort of extension if they really want him. But that was the move that surprised me the most.
Hmm.
All right. Okay. Now let's focus on some of the free agents. I have the top 101 list of free agents. Um, like on my tab right now that we can talk through. We just talked about Wilkins being among like the top free agents on the market. Other ones are Chris Jones, which I previously mentioned. It would have cost the Chiefs 32 million to place a
Hmm.
franchise on Jones because again, with the franchise tag, it's either the average of the top 5 players at your position
Hmm.
or it's 120% of your previous contract.
Yeah.
So you might look at that contract for Chris Jones and be like, this doesn't line up with the top 5 defensive tackles in the league. But you have to keep in mind that Chris Jones is 30 years old. He's already had like a second contract offered to him, and this is like 100 for 20% of that. So
Hmm.
um, great job by him. Like as far as timeline, getting to this point, and he's gonna have a huge payday. I hope it's with the Bears, but he sounded like he wants to stick with the Chiefs. Then you
Hmm.
got Kirk Cousins. Then you got Daniil Hunter. He had a really good season, 16 and a half sacks.
Hmm. Yeah, he was
Tyron
good.
Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Grenard, breakout season, 12 and a half sacks. Calvin Ridley, everybody was hyped about him when the Jaguars featured him as a number one receiver.
Hmm.
Um, Micah Wenwu, really great guard from the Patriots that I would be ecstatic if the Bears could get him. And Leonard Williams out of the Seahawks. Those are just a few names. Um, but as you're parsing through your list of free agents, are there guys like under the radar, guys you definitely want to have? What kind of free agents are you looking at?
Um. Yeah, I think I don't know. I feel like there's a couple guys that like finished their first contract, kind of like guys like Patrick Queen, Lloyd Cushenberry, that are interesting guys to kind of think about for your team. Or it's like they haven't consistently been good, but they've shown kind of signs of being good, and I think those are going to be like the interesting contracts to pay attention to, especially because like those two guys specifically are also 25 and 26 respectively, and so it's like you can expect like a 4 or 5 year deal, I think, from either one of those guys for probably an overpay just because of their age and just like the ceilings that both these guys basically have right now. But I don't know, like off the top of my head, those are two guys. But then you got, I mean, like, and including that, I guess you got like guys like Xavier McKinney, Chauncey Gardner Johnson, Mike Onwenu. Who else is here? But yeah, kind of like I don't know. There's like those guys that I think are really intriguing guys because I
Lloyd
can imagine.
Cushenberry is still out there.
Uh huh. Yeah, it's like all those guys I think can get pretty big, hefty contracts their way. So it'll be kind of really big to see if they can like continue momentum on to whatever team they go to next.
I just saw Chase Young ranked at 25 on this
Hmm.
list. I'm like, that's got to be a mistake. Like, he's 25 years old. He was like the top pick in the draft. Like, it's I would take the chance on him. He's an edge rusher in his prime. He could always figure it out. Um,
Yeah.
Another guy who had a lot of hype and I'm buying is Bryce Huff,
Uh huh.
out of the Jets. Um, I would extend him a deal. Um, let's see here. I'm just parsing through this list. Um,
Hmm.
Josh Jacobs. I think if you have a really great offensive line, um, like I would offer him a deal.
Hmm.
I would even like send an offer to Barkley. I would wait on those guys a little bit, wait till one or the other gets signed, then try to go aggressively for the other,
Hmm.
because you want to see what the market defines them as. Um, but you got that. Cameron Curl, um, he's the underrated safety that I think would make a great Eddie Jackson replacement for the Bears, but like great safety in general. Let's see here. Josh Uche, maybe on him. Julian Blackman, he was an amazing. He was amazing coming out of the draft class. I was
Hmm.
high on him. Like. I think you take a flyer on him, even though
Hmm.
he's had a Achilles injury. Um,
Yeah. And
that's somebody you'd take advantage of. Sorry,
and then
I'm hogging all the time just geeking out free
no,
agents
no,
right
no.
now.
And then like another guy that'll be pretty intriguing to see how his contract works out is like Devin White. You know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because he's like I don't know, I'm looking at probably almost this identical list as you are, but like he's like ranked 60 on the NFL list for free
Yep,
agents.
I'm looking at the NFL list.
Okay, yeah.
That's
It's like
that's crazy to me.
yeah, and it was just like him having a pretty down year this season. Uh yeah,
Dorrance
Jeremy Chin's on
Armstrong, I
here.
remember talking about him last week. He
Uh-huh.
was a great pass rusher from the Cowboys.
Yeah. Multiple offensive linemen for like the Packers are on this list. Oh yeah, Shaq Barrett's on here. Noah Fant's a free agent.
And I know he's on the Panthers. Like I get it. That team was a dumpster fire last year. But Jeremy Chin would be a steal for whoever gets him.
Mm-hmm.
I loved his game coming out of the draft as well. Um, he's a great safety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like that's a guy that I think's underrated. Um, yeah, I just see the Green Bay offensive lineman you talked about. Geno Stone. Also, there's a lot of great safeties in this class. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of great safeties. Wow.
Yeah. And then even then you're talking about running backs earlier too, and like it'll be interesting to see the types of contracts guys like Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift get as well. Because I know they're in like the pool now, and so it's like
I would give J.K. Dobbins a wet minimum because I think the
mhm,
talent's still there. I'm willing to take the chance on like I just have him on my depth chart, give him all the time he needs to recover
mhm,
from his Achilles injury, get into the best shape of his career, and
mhm,
then like have him as a third or fourth running back. And obviously, J.K. Dobbins is not my only plan. They draft a guy you think has potential, and then may the best man win whenever J.K. Dobbins. Like he needs to get into a situation where he's not forced to recover from his Achilles fast enough.
mhm,
But I think the talent's absolutely there. I just think he's got way, way too unlucky with the injuries.
mhm.
Like you're not making an investment in him for 2024, 2025. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
not why you make the signing. If you're thinking about building a team and just trying to get the best players you can to have the best football team you can, you want to get J.K. Dobbins. Like he has as much potential as Jonathan Taylor in that same draft class. Like people forget how great he was at Ohio State. Like, um, like the Browns aren't giving up on Nick Chubb, right?
Mhm.
Like it's kind of like J.K. Dobbins has that potential, and not. And what I'm not saying is that he's definitely going to hit on that. That's like a big unknown. We can't predict the
Mhm.
future, but like, why not take the chance? Well, he's not done anything wrong. He's literally just got injured. That's like you take that chance, you sign into a vet minimum. He's gonna be cheaper than Jacobs, Barkley, Swift, Eckler. We didn't mention him at all. Um, like that's the guy like I would extend a contract to 3 years, be like, hey, we know you're hurt right now. You know you're probably not going to play with us next season, but we're willing to take the risk with you because we know the kind of potential you have. And then make him your only plan. You probably have a starter in place. You're probably going to draft a guy to replace him, like a Jameer Gibbs type from the draft. If you
Mhm.
get that, if you get him, great. And now all of a sudden you have this three-headed monster going to 2025, 2026.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's just me. I don't know. Would you try to sign J.K. Dobbins, or you rather sign other people and then
Um,
take the risk that he's just out there?
yeah, I feel like at this stage, like I like the potential. I don't like necessarily like sitting on injured guys that aren't yours for that long, you know. And so
Mm,
it's like I feel like you could. I feel like I like the idea of just testing out like rookies, basically, you know, especially with just the fact that rookie running backs can really come out of any spot in the draft. And so it's like, sure, I have a better idea of what I will have with J.K. Dobbins once he's fully healthy, but like, I might as well, you know, take a shot at two similar play style running backs in the draft, see if they give me what I want, at least in the situational situations, um, and just kind of roll with that. And then I have that guy for like 4 years, you know, before I have to make a decision. Whereas I'm paying J.K. Dobbins minimum a year or two just to sit and be like injured when I could be cycling through like 3 or 4 just rookie running backs that aren't on expensive contracts either, to kind of see if that's the guy I want. Because then in addition to that, you get, like the rookie guys are just gonna be younger and like in general, you know, and so like
yeah.
I'm willing to, you know, risk the rookie draft pick, especially like a late day two, maybe like day three type player, that's 21 years old, and then have him sign that second contract if he is still like just about okay, you know, and just kind of roll with that. But I do see the merit in what you're saying though about like, you know, having if you do think J.K. Dobbins is like the guy perfect for your offensive scheme, and that your offense is already good enough that your offensive coordinator is not going to get fired in that time span. Um, you know, because I mean that's like another thing is like, do you shell out a contract for like a year or two if you're like a middle of the pack team that has a chance of having a complete coaching shift like within the next 3 years, and all of a sudden J.K. Dobbins is like, well, I'm healthy now, but my play style doesn't fit the scheme anymore, so then he gets cut, and then he's that much older, and then it's a lot harder to sign a contract with like just a new regime at that point too.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think your strongest point there was I would not even sign him for this season if I know he's not going to play, because then
Mm-hmm.
I'm just allocating money for him to sit. And I think it's definitely one of those things where you take it on a case by case basis,
Mm-hmm.
and the case being like the talent. You measure the talent with the amount of money you're going to pay him for sure. Um, I think in this market with the running backs the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
I think you do take that chance, because there's also another variable to this, and that's how the running back contracts are going to be structured. We had talked about how we want to structure like running back contracts ideally so that they don't run into this problem of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, after the rookie contract's done, like
Mm-hmm.
the team doesn't want them anymore because it'll cost too much to pay them. Look at
Yeah,
Josh Jacobs, look at Saquon, look at Austin Eckler now. Like even though he's like probably 30, 31 now, I
he's
think.
like 30-ish.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like nobody's like dropping like everything to sign them right now.
mm-hmm.
Like not their own teams. So um I think that could easily change within the next 2 to 3 years. And then it's like, oh wait, if it's shorter term contracts like coming out as a rookie and then you get extended, like the running back market could increase. Um like the salaries could be a lot more beneficial for running backs in 2 to 3 years as well. So like there's a lot of change that can happen. Um so like this was more like saying I believe in the talent of J.K. Dobbins, and you want to get out of head of your running back problem you may
Mm-hmm.
have, like with your current depth chart. So like I'm looking at the Eagles. I think the Eagles could use a talent like J.K. Dobbins,
Mm-hmm.
but like if you look at their play style, they never had to rely on a single running back. But
Mm-hmm.
like if they had a healthy J.K. Dobbins, they would have a completely different dynamic on offense. He's that talented.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even though it looks like Sirianni's on his way out if he has another disappointing season, like I think the bulk of that roster won't change that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're talking about Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, like Devonta Smith, those guys will still be there. And for a team like that, and then like you hope Goddard would still be there. With a
Mhm.
structure like that, and like how great the offensive line is for the Eagles, even with the loss of Jason Kelsey in retirement, like Dobbins would eat in that offense, absolutely eat. And like he's on low contract deal right now. So, but then again, with a
Mhm.
team like the Eagles, they can end up saying, we might as well take our hand at like the rookies and see what they offer, and then go from there.
Mhm.
So, um,
Yeah.
they just went after Penny, who's had like injury concerns. So like that's like a team I see right now that can make like a low
Mhm.
cost investment. They did it with Trey Sermon.
Oh.
What's stopping them from doing it from another like reputable Ohio State guy? So, um, from a logical perspective, you're 100% right as far as like managing the cap and your
Mhm.
resources. Um, this is just from a talent perspective, saying like I know what J.K. Dobbins can do. Give him a chance and watch him like transform your
Mhm.
offense.
Yeah, I could imagine Dobbins kind of following a similar career trajectory to Jerick McKinnon, where like he had a couple, he like kind of blew up in Minnesota, and so he
That's
signed
a
like
great analogy.
the mega deal with the 49ers. Was literally hurt the entire time. Then when he got healthy, they kind of already moved on from him. And so like then he went to the Chiefs where he's not in really of a prominent role, but like when they call on him, he's like a good enough, player in space that he can make big plays and make key plays. And I think that, J.K. Dobbins can have a long career. I mean, like it's just like the risk of so many leg injuries in the first place that like I don't think he's ever going to be like a bell cow or like lead back type of guy. But if he's like
Yeah.
in a situation where even if maybe he is running back one, but it's not like a run centric offense where they, switch out guys quite a bit, where he really
He's
only
getting
has
like
to
10
come in on
carries a
passing
game or something.
situations with
Yeah.
occasional run situations. I
Mm.
think then he can really excel there and, um, and really, I guess, put on a show for teams, especially if you sound like a competitive team late in the playoffs.
Like at this point, you don't think he's gonna follow the same career as Todd Gurley, right?
No.
Like Todd Gurley produced like massive numbers. Like he produced
Mhm.
better than J.K. Dobbins, like at his peak. Absolutely. But like I don't think the fall off from J.K. Dobbins is gonna be like as bad like was Todd Gurley was going from Los Angeles to Atlanta. And I also think Atlanta made a mistake, like trusting Todd Gurley in that starter role, bell cow role, right from the get
Mhm.
go. But all these concerns floating around, I think they should have tempered expectations and like made a plan around Todd Gurley, to be honest. And I think the good organizations will do that. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's where I'm at with that. But that's just a wild like bottom of the barrel free agent signing I would love to have. Um, if if you're listening to this conversation, I lean on the side of like making risky decisions on like
Mhm.
low bets like this. Corsian's on the side of like I want to make sure I have the cap space to get
Mhm.
the talent I want and like get these rookies, get the right deals and stuff like that. So you get a balance of like our takes here. Um,
Mhm.
I guess another guy we didn't talk about is um, that's in a similar situation as Michael Thomas.
Uh
I
huh.
think he's still he's still a great talent to have on your team. He is not the reception like leader in the NFL type receiver he was like with Breeze. I think that potential's not there anymore. But like
Mhm.
I will say this. If he lands on the team like the Bengals, where he has to be like third guy, that's the ideal situation for him. Because he is like a great slot receiver. Does win great like short. And if you combine him with like Chase being a really great deep threat, all around threat, one of the best receivers in the league. Higgins, great possession guy, 50-50 ball. He could do a little bit more than that. There's a reason the Bengals franchise tagged him. And then you add like a low cost receiver like Thomas to that offense, gives a different dynamic, throws another curveball.
Mhm.
Um, if he signs with the Bills, I think the same thing can happen. If he gives like that Cole Beasley effect in the Josh Allen offense, I think that'd be great for the Bills. Um,
Mhm.
like if he lands in a situation with a contender that has like established receivers, and like he's not focused to be the number 1 or number 2 guy, I think it's a really great situation for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So we touched on one aspect on like free agents we would like. Let's say you had $50 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Which players would you use it on within this list?
Well, I feel like Chris Jones is probably. I mean, like, I feel like I can't go wrong with Chris Jones, no matter the price. You know, like from this entire list, if that was the only guy I could get, I don't think I'd be too upset with that.
Corstian's like, I'm gonna throw all 50 million at Chris Jones right now.
Yeah, I mean that's not his like asking price, so obviously I don't have to pay him 50 million. But I feel like the impact that I can expect from Chris Jones, I mean that's why he's listed as he's ranked number 1 here, right? Like,
yeah.
So he's on there. Then I guess also like what team, because I feel like my interest of players as well comes a lot from like what team I am looking into free agency.
Let's say you're like Carolina, for instance.
Carolina. If I was Carolina, I probably wouldn't go Chris Jones then necessarily.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a lot for that team. They need a lot of players, more so than like really crazy like top the market free agents, and then like screw their roster even more.
Yeah, I guess one of the highest ranked players I look on here if I'm Carolina would be like Marquise Brown. I think it's a much needed like threat on the offense to have someone like him. If you don't want to spend money at all on receiver for some reason and want just a worse version of Marquise Brown, I guess you can get like Gabe Davis. But I think Marquise Brown would be really nice because I feel like last season they had a lot of pretty strong like possession, kind of quick. I don't know, not quick, but like short throw, kind of intermediate throw distance guys, which is good. But then the absolute lack of deep threat that I think that the Panthers had, you know, like really limited just their playmaking or just their playability. So I think Marquise Brown would be a really good guy here. I think I
like that.
Really any offensive lineman, you know, that you think I guess fits whatever offensive schemes. I mean, like what you have like Mike and Wenwu on this list, who I think could be like beneficial, especially just with the I don't know, I felt like the Panthers offensive line was very much a weak point, and it resulted in a lot of like unnecessary hits on Bryce Young. And so I think someone like that could be a beneficial piece. I know Tyron Smith's a free agent technically, and so it's like I think that, you know, if they want, you know, a solid tackle just to keep Bryce Young up, at least from like a pass rush or like an edge rusher kind of.
Would you draft a tackle in that case then? In like the second round, third round?
Well, I feel like I don't know. I feel like maybe third round, but like even then, I feel like it's nice to know you have at least a guaranteed guy for year one, and then your guy that you draft can like either learn or kind of just fill in for like weak spots. Because I know like especially rookies have like a lot of time to or like frequently end up moving around the offensive line just to kind of like fill in gaps for the time being to gain a little bit of experience. Obviously, if they can get their like original position, that's the best for them. But I think it could be moved there. But I think in the second round, if I'm the Panthers, I want to go wide receiver again, or just go wide receiver. Even if I get Marquise Brown, you know, I want to get wide receiver just to get as many like receiving threats, because again, I want to push down, like, no offense to Adam Thielen, but I want to push him down the depth chart as far as I can, because the lower he is, it just means that that's how great my receiver room is. This kind of like my thoughts on it, because even if he ends up being like maybe like a rotational number 2, number 3 guy in that offense, I think he's still going to be great in that role. But yeah. I think if you can get Marquise Brown on one side and then you get one of the like a million elite rookies on the other side, and then you
Like
have
Lad McConkey. Like
Mhm.
if Lad McConkey was on that team, that would be a perfect room for Bryce
Yeah,
Young to follow.
and then you just kind of have like Adam Thielen is kind of your rotational piece to kind of like help move another receiver around that offense. I think it'd be like a really great kind of this trio group, and then
I think they released Hayden Hurst too, right?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But
I know. Yeah. I know the Texans extended Dalton Schultz today on the 3-year deal.
oh yeah,
And I
I
saw
was
that Hayden
excited for
Hurst.
him.
That's a good move by the Texans. But
hmm
anyway, we're getting off tangent there. But
Yeah.
I liked your offensive lineman strategy there. I would probably go with Grenard to
hmm
Jonathan Grenard. I would invest in him to
hmm
give Brian Burns like a guy opposite him. I like a Wenwood, like what you mentioned.
hmm
Um, Huff, Huff is a great guy. Let's see here, Cushionberry.
hmm
Um, I'm just Chase Young. I would take a chance with him.
hmm
Um, I'm I'm being very strategic here. I'm picking all edges and offensive line on purpose. I think
hmm
they have to build from the ground up. If you want to be like the Lions, look at what they did with their strategy. They
hmm
rebuilt their lines first. They invested. I think everybody on that offensive line is like a first round pick and a really good first round pick at that. Um, I would follow that same model, but apply it for your offensive and defensive line. You want the offensive line of the Lions, and you want the defensive line of the Jets or the Ravens or the Browns. Like
hmm
that's what you're aiming for here. And I think if you do
hmm
that, you're gonna give Bryce Young the support there. And then, like you mentioned, if you're aiming to offer Bryce Young as much support as possible for the draft by going for receivers, that allows you to do that. The
hmm
reason I asked the Tyron Smith question is I would do the same thing. If I want to go after a guy, I'm just looking for talented offensive linemen. I don't care
hmm
about their age. Tyron Smith's up there, like with the
hmm
Bryce Huffs and the Wenwus. Like I'm prioritizing him with the plan that I'm gonna draft a tackle.
hmm
Worst case scenario, he sits behind Tyron Smith for 1 or 2 years,
hmm
and Tyron Smith suddenly retires
hmm
because just wanted a payday for 1 year and then call it quits. Now you
hmm
have a plan to slot that tackle in place, developing under him, or in worst case scenario, he's kind of like your sixth offensive lineman or your right tackle because something happened
hmm
during the season. These are the kind of plans you have to formulate if you're the Panthers. You don't
Uh-huh.
have a lot of picks to work with in this draft because the deal you made with the Bears. And thank you very much for DJ Moore. But
hmm
um, um, like because of that, you have to be very targeted in free agency. So like it'd be nice to have a Chris Jones. It'd be nice to have um like all these other like a Calvin Ridley right now. I'm sure Carolina would love to have him.
hmm
Or a Saquon. But
hmm
like I don't think they're at that stage yet to have the luxury of doing that. I think they need to build this from the ground up. So get as many players as you can around the 25, 26, 27 range to show potential, great on the lines.
hmm
That's because that's a team that can grow with Bryce Young,
hmm
in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Jonah Williams is another interesting guy.
Yeah, forgot to mention him.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I guess, really average offensive linemen, which aren't bad. Like, I think a lot of teams could wish they just had a fully average offensive line, and so I think he'd be like an interesting fit, especially because he can play left or right tackle there. But then also, I'm just kind of keep on going with this Panthers thing, but I think maybe one of like the non-premier running backs would be an interesting fit here. Just because again, their rushing attack was pretty lackluster. I know a big part of that came from the awful offensive line, but um, if you can get one of these kind of like mid-tier running backs for like a pretty cheap, like 1-2 year prove it deal, even like a 2 year, not maybe not like a prove it because running backs don't really get prove it deals anymore, but like a 2 year contract for a guy like Tony Pollard or like Devin Singletary, just to kind of like,
I would go after Zach Moss.
uh huh,
I think you get more value out of Zach Moss compared to those guys you mentioned.
mm-hmm,
Because like Devin Singletary, he's had some starter play. Like he's probably going to get a higher contract with like what he did with the Texans.
mm-hmm,
I don't think a lot of people paid attention to what Zach Moss did with the Colts because there's just so much that happened. with like
Mhm.
Jonathan Taylor, with Anthony Richardson going down. Like, that's a guy I would target. Zonovan Knight, he has a lot of potential. Rico Dottle, he did really good as a backup to Tony Pollard.
Mhm.
Um, I would give those guys a shot because if you're the Panthers, like I know everybody says they want to compete for championships. That's in their motto,
Mhm.
but they're not at that stage right now. They are not at that stage right now. They are building. So you need to make progress towards that, and that includes like taking low risk, multiple like darts at the wall and see what happens.
Mhm. Yeah. Now this is a pretty fun class of free agents. I feel like you can go pretty deep here on this list and like find guys with like pretty solid value. Um, that I think we'll see a lot of like nice contracts. I think this free agency. Um, yeah, whether it be like a 1 year like pretty hefty kind of price tag or whatever, or if it's like a nice multi-year like $100 million type caliber contract. But I think we're going to see a lot of those this offseason, which will be a lot of fun. We'll see where Russell Wilson goes.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even talk about Odell at all, or like we briefly mentioned Austin Eckler. Um, Jordan Whitehead's another great safety. We didn't mention him, but I mean, I don't think a lot of teams were anticipating the cap space to go this high
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of young talent that you'd think would be resigned at these points, and it's just like, oh no, we're gonna let them test the market. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you're gonna see a lot of. It'll be curious. I'm curious to see which teams like go big payday that
Mm-hmm.
looks good to get the player for now, but then looks bad when you're trying to manage the salary cap, and then like next year is
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, the salary cap's actually decreasing by like $10 million, and then that team is screwed. Like, I'd be curious to see which teams like try to win free agency, and then which teams like try to manage their situations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's still like surplus after free agency, and then have money to work with. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be an interesting follow.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to the most in free agency?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's always easy to say quarterbacks. Just because I don't know. Whenever every time a quarterback moves, it's kind of like exciting to see how things play out that way. Um, but I don't know. I feel like there's a really good range of like older veteran players and kind of guys off their first like rookie contract that are entering that are all actually like pretty solid guys because like looking on here, like Micah Hyde here, obviously he's not the player that he used to be, but like I think he's kind of like an intriguing kind of like fill in the gap kind of safety player. Um, but yeah, and then just a lot of guys that aren't like the blockbuster names, but are like important playmakers. Which,
Brandon Graham.
mm-hmm,
Like, I would give him a 1 year deal. Like, I don't think he's even close to being done.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I think the quarterback market is gonna really drive like the action as far as like
mm-hmm,
which teams go after which pieces. So if you guys haven't seen that episode, check out episode 58 from last week. We did a really nice deep dive into the quarterbacks and like where we think they would land, which QBs we would have, how many QBs we think be taken from the first round of the draft. According to Adam Schefter, could be as much as 6, and
mm-hmm.
5 could be taken in the first round. I mean, it could happen. 5 could be taken in the top 10. I doubt it. I doubt it. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most is seeing like which free agent gets the big payday, how much Chris Jones is going to get paid, who gets Chris Jones. It can end up being the Chiefs, and like this discussion about him is like all for naught. But like there's like it's just like the Panthers to give him a $40 million contract for like
Mm-hmm.
1 year and then see what happens there. So,
Yeah.
um, you never know. With that, guys, thank you for watching. You can follow us at our Instagram page at amon.a.mission. It's my right hand. Okay. No, I missed it again. I will never get this right. So there you have it. Follow us on our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe. Corsan's pointed twice at that, so you better follow it. Um, Leave us some feedback on like how the episodes go, what you're most excited to see in free agency, what do you think is going to happen, and with that, see you later, Gators.
Peace out.